A man from Minnesota is suing Colorado to force the state to provide him with what's known as medical assistance in dying. It says he has terminal intestinal cancer, which makes processing food extremely painful. The lawsuit says that the man does not want to die right now, but if his suffering becomes unbearable, he does want the option. Aid in dying is not legal in Minnesota, and right now he cannot get access to it here in Colorado. The lawsuit claims the state's residency requirement is unconstitutional because it denies people in other states the same rights as Coloradans and limits doctors' ability to take patients from out of state. Joining me this morning to discuss this lawsuit is our 9 News legal expert, Whitney Traylor. Whitney, good morning.
Good morning, Jordan.
Okay, before we get into this lawsuit, explain to us, because this has been controversial in Colorado.
Yeah.
Tell us how this became law and what people are kind of feeling about it.
Yeah, and I think this has been controversial throughout the country. In Colorado, actually, we passed this law somewhat overwhelming. There was a lot of support for it in 2016. It was Proposition 106. And so we passed it, and essentially the law says that if you have a terminal illness and you've been diagnosed with 6 months or less to live, you can then get this assistance in medical aid in dying if you get 2 doctors to sign off on it with more than 15 days apart. And so you can go ahead and do that. But the issue is that it has a residency requirement. So it requires that you be a Colorado resident. So this Minnesota man and this nonprofit organization that filed the lawsuit is saying, hey, this is unconstitutional. I want the right to be able to come and do this. The residency requirement specifically is what they're challenging is unconstitutional.
And what's interesting, we were talking about this in the commercial break, is the person who filed this lawsuit on behalf of him, or this organization, I should say, is a nonprofit who actually has experience in doing this with other states.
Right. So it's Compassion and Caring, I think, is the nonprofit, and they have filed this is the 4th lawsuit of this kind, and 2 of them, actually in Oregon and Vermont, settled on that residency requirement. So they took out the residency requirement. And right now there's 12 states that have this medical aid in dying. 6 of them require the residency aspect. And so this nonprofit, I think, is, their objective is to make law. So they're suing in these different places, challenging specifically right now the residency requirement, which 2 states have actually removed.
So let me ask an obvious question here. Why doesn't this man look at one of the states where the residency limitation has already been removed? That's
a great question, and I think this is a situation where somebody is suing to make law.
Okay.
And so a lot of times, and when you have, this is called venue shopping, if you will, but here, this is not so much about the man. Even though he's saying, look, I want to have the option, I want to live right now, but if it gets unbearable, if the pain's too bad, I want to have this option, and the residency requirement is unlawful. So they're specifically attacking states that have this residency requirement with the idea of expanding this medical aid in dying across the nation.
Okay, that is really fascinating. Now, one other question we have, of course, depending on how the court rules, is this kind of an expansion of assisted suicide in our state?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's an expansion because here, and especially if they prevail, because right now it says you have to have the 2 doctors sign off more than 15 days, you have to be diagnosed less than 6 months, and you have to have this residency requirement. So if they take out the residency requirement, then you will be able to do so, and it expands this right. But I think on a larger scale, what they're really trying to do is actually give this right to more people across the nation.
Right.
So this organization is about education and about trying to, through the court system, expand these rights.
I want to ask you a quick question about the 2 doctors that have to sign off on this. Can they be from Minnesota, or do they have to be 2 doctors from Colorado who've reviewed the case and signed off on it here?
So they have to be Colorado doctors, and they are Colorado doctors. So they're actually the plaintiffs as well. So it's the Minnesota resident and the 2 doctors that are actually the plaintiffs saying, hey, we've signed off, we've checked every box according to this rule, so now we should be able to go forward, and this man should be able to get this prescription. We should be able to prescribe it to him. So they're also the plaintiffs. And that was important because they would have standing, because they're actually people who are aggrieved. We can't treat the patients we want to because of this residency requirement.
Very interesting. Real fast, because we're out of time.
Sure.
What is the next step that we're watching for in this case?
Well, the next step is going to be, first of all, the state has to respond. So this lawsuit was just filed last week. So they have to respond. But what I'm really looking towards is, are they going to settle like Oregon and Vermont did and try and take out this residency requirement, or let it go through the court process and a judge actually impose a ruling?
That'd be quite the change. All right,
Yes.
Whitney, thank you for giving a really good explanation on all of this. We appreciate it.
Yep.